Hey people, it's Niall Stokey. This is from the BBC. So, George Floyd, thousands protest against racism in Washington, D.C. Large crowds have gathered to protest against racism and police brutality in Washington, D.C., and rising anger sparked by the death of George Floyd. Mr. Floyd died in Minneapolis on 25th May after a policeman knelt on his neck even as he said he could not breathe. There have been protests across the U.S. since, but Washington's police chief believes Saturdays may be one of the largest we've ever had in the city. Anti-racism rallies have also been taking place in other countries. Parliament Square in central London was filled with people supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, despite calls by the British government to avoid mass gatherings for fear of spreading the coronavirus. Infections have been confirmed in a handful of U.S. protesters in Kansas, Georgia, and Ohio, reports the New York Times. In Australia, there were major protests in the city of Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane that focused on the treatment of Indigenous Australians. Floyd, an unarmed black man, died after being arrested outside a shop. Just one thing that I remember seeing a meme was I said, when you carry the black skin, and your skin is seen as a weapon, you're never seen as unarmed. Okay, let's keep going. Video footage showed a white police officer, Derek Chauvin, kneeling off Floyd's neck for almost 9 minutes while he's pinned to the floor. Mr. Floyd is heard breathing, repeatedly saying, "I can't breathe." Mr. Chauvin has been dismissed and charged with murder. 3 other officers who were on the scene have also been sacked and charged with aiding and abetting. On Saturday, hundreds of people queued to pay respects to Mr. Floyd in Rayford, North Carolina, laying flowers at public viewing of his body in a church. A private memorial service has been held in Rayford, near where Mr. Floyd was born. What is planned in Washington? Almost a dozen different demonstrations have been advertised by organizations and activists, according to social media. Protesters have been asked to gather at landmarks such as the Lincoln Memorial and the Capitol, and some are expected to march towards the White House. We have a lot of public open source information to suggest that the event on this upcoming Saturday may be one of the largest we've ever had in the city. Metropolitan Police Department Chief Peter Newsam told journalists. Did not provide a crowd estimate, but Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy said local officials were projecting that between 100,000 and 200,000 people would attend. On Friday, Washington Mayor Muriel Bowser, who has clashed with President Donald Trump over his handling of the protests triggered by Mr. Floyd's death, asked for the withdrawal of all federal law enforcement officers and National Guard troops from the city streets. In recent days, it has become apparent that their presence was unnecessary and may be counterproductive to ensure the protesters remain peaceful. Ms. Bowser also renamed as Black Lives Matter Plaza, an area opposite the White House, where federal officers fired smoke grenades to clear protesters ahead of a visit to a church by Mr. Trump on Monday. City workers painted Black Lives Matter in large yellow letters on the ground. And I just want to call this out. This doesn't mean anything. They've renamed streets before, but they've never given any of the reparations that are due. Think about this. Millions of acres of land have been lost from black people's farms, and lots of people have. There's all sorts of things ways that black people have lost, like banks charging more interest, denying loans, redlining and gerrymandering areas that are ghettos where black people can't escape from, all which have been done with the federal government's help, and none of these things have been fixed. This is not going to be fixed with some cheap stunt like Black Lives Matter on a road. Let's keep going. By noon, more than 1,000 protesters had gathered outside Lafayette Park near the White House at the newly renamed Black Lives Matter Plaza. The crowd was diverse, with people of different ethnicities and families with children, and there was an upbeat, if determined mood. Music was being played, and food is being handed out as protesters chant George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and No Justice, No Peace. Sister Serena LaCroix and Grace LaCroix, 16, said they were protesting for the first time, and they believed the extent of the public outrage and the nationwide nature of these protests could lead to police reforms. We're just getting started this time. The movement does feel much more collective than the past, said Serena. Many placards also reflected the growing debate about how white people should help the cause. One placard held by a demonstrator read, "I may never understand, but I will stand with you." What do protesters want? An end to police brutality is undoubtedly at the forefront of protests nationwide, but isn't the only concern. Repeated incidents of police brutality may become the flashpoint, but issues with law enforcement are emblematic of the wider problems of systemic racism and inequality on social media and on the streets. Those in support of the movement have called on elected officials to address these long-standing inequalities, from law enforcement to mass incarceration to healthcare. Black Americans are jailed at 5 times the rate of white Americans, and they are sentenced for drug offenses at 6 times more often, despite equal rates of drug use, according to the NAACP, which is a group that doesn't really do much for black people. It seems to lobby more for illegal immigrants than the black people it was founded to help. Black mothers die in childbirth at over twice the rate of white mothers, according to national health data. Decades of government-sanctioned segregation have also seen inequalities across school systems, housing, and other public resources. A 2019 Pew Research Center study found more than 8 in 10 black adults say the legacy of slavery still affects black Americans' position today. Half say it is unlikely America will ever see true racial equality. As demonstrator Kyla Burgess told BBC Minute, the system has failed me for 300 plus years, so what do I have to do to make it change? North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper has ordered the flags be flown in half-mast from sunrise to sunset on Saturday in Mr. Floyd's honor. In Buffalo, 2 police officers have been charged with second-degree assault after they were filmed pushing an elderly protester to the ground, seriously injuring him. The officers who pleaded not guilty and were released without bail were suspended without pay after footage of the incident went viral on Thursday. 57 of their colleagues resigned from the Buffalo Police Department's emergency response team in response to their suspension. The protester, 75-year-old Martin Gugino, remains in hospital in a serious but stable condition. On Friday, the Minneapolis City Council and the Minnesota Department of Human Rights agreed to ban police neck restraints and chokeholds. I want to address that. Banning it doesn't do anything. When Eric Garner got choked out by that Daniel Pantoliani, whatever his name is, that was banned by New York police, but they didn't do anything to him. In fact, he was hired, remained on the force for years and was only dismissed with huge public pressure with no charges. Let's keep going. California Governor Gavin Newsom also said he would move to end state police training in the use of the carotid restraint. Seattle's Mayor Carmen Best meanwhile banned the use by police of CS gas against protesters, and a federal judge in Denver ordered police to stop the use of tear gas, plastic bullets, and other non-lethal force. In separate development, the National Football League reversed its policy on protests against injustice by players during the national anthem, which is hypocritical and disgusting. They're just morally bankrupt. We were wrong for not listening to NFL players earlier and encouraged all to speak out and peacefully protest, Commissioner Roger Goodell said. I've already had a solution for this. I've always advocated for your Tijuanian black Americans to just be given their own land and nation and just be separate and let them have their own government and let them do things their way. Because it seems far more easier than having to constantly lobby for change in this American system that seems completely built on anti-blackness and keeping black people down. Anyway, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe, and stay safe out there. Peace.